Okay, we're going to have, hopefully we'll have a little bit of fun tonight. So let me go ahead and get started. Welcome, and I appreciate you calling in tonight or connecting in. We're going to talk about yards. If you have other questions, but I'm going to try and cover most of it and go through it. So it's interesting when I talk about the perfect yard, because I have some people that they want the perfect yard. It's a lot of work. Now, so the question is, do you want the perfect yard? Now, for some people, this is the perfect yard. As you can tell, it's well taken care of. I have a brother-in-law. This is their perfect yard, which means that he never has to mow it. My son loves this yard because he doesn't have to mow it in August. It's brown, and he loves brown grass because it doesn't do much. Randy, was this your yard? I couldn't remember. No. And then it's our tolerance for weeds. You know, if you have one molehill or one dandelion, you're probably going no big deal. But there gets to be a point when the yellow outshines the green where you're going, maybe I need to do something here. So, but this is probably close to where we talk about a perfect yard. It has that nice, consistent color. You know, it's well manicured and things like that. Again, it takes some work. And so we'll talk about some different things and what needs to happen here. So I think the first area I want to talk about is the soil. Talking about topsoil. If you have garbage for soil, it's going to make it really tough on the grass and the plants, because that soil is going to be the basis for where your plants come from. We all know that it's mostly clay and glacier, unless you live next to the beach, and then maybe you have sand, but you probably don't have a lot of loam and things like that unless you have a lot of organic material. So we're all stuck with this wonderful clay that really holds the water well, but there's some other problems with that. Getting that started certainly in the grass and all that is fine. The grass will break it up. It'll do its thing. But again, the better soil that you can start with, the better off you're going to be. And it's certainly going to give you a better basis for that grass taking off and that grass doing well. So we start off with one grass plant here, you know, all by itself. So it's going to pop up and it's going to start to take off. And as we start to think about that grass plant, we've got to understand what we see is everything above the soil. But it's got a root system too. And that root system is really important. When that grass plant takes up, you see the leaves start to spread out, and it's collecting water and collecting the soil and collecting water and sunshine and really helping that plant to take off. But really what got it started was the roots. It was taking all its energy from the roots and pushing up and off and going. And there's going to be a point where that root system is starting to be used up. And as that root system starts to be used up, that grass is going to be big enough, it's going to start sending nutrients and soil down to those roots. And so when we think about that system, we have the grass on top, we have the soil. The other thing to notice is grass roots don't go down that far. If you've ever had to look at the sod and everything, you don't have to go down 3 foot, 4 foot. It's not like some of those dandelions we have to deal with or thistles. Certainly when we talk about grass and what we have, it's really more of a top thing. So we're talking about the top 1 or 2 inches. That root system goes in, becomes really intertwined, and then you have the grass plant on top. And so we want to take care of the roots. We want to make sure they do really well, and then we want to make sure that that plant is growing well. So I'm going to ask some questions as we go along here, just to make sure people are awake. So I need to move that out of the way, and I am going to start my first poll. So what you do is, I have a question for you. Go ahead and, if you're on computer, go ahead and take your mouse and put it above the question that you hit. The poll is anonymous. It's not going to tell me which question that Taylor hit and which question Catherine hit. It's just going to lump them all the same, but we'll see where we're at here. So I'm going to launch this poll, and it's going to say, when does a garden or a lawn go dormant? Was the grass go dormant? Is it winter, spring, summer, fall, or grass never goes dormant? So there's 6 of you. So what do you think? And again, it's anonymous. Nobody's going to know. Okay, 4 of you answered, 5 of you answered. Oh, 7 out of 7. Outstanding. So most people thought it was the summer. A few people thought fall. And we had one person that said, nah, it never goes dormant. And, I had to share results. So that's what the results look like. So, you know, a little bit of a mixed bag. Nobody thought winter or spring, which is good because it's not winter or spring. So this is what grass looks like during the year. And in spring, we're out there mowing every week. Lots and lots of grass. Then it comes down to summer. And sometimes we think, well, it's not raining very much, so that grass is going dormant. There's more heat and everything like that. And grass does go dormant during the summer. That's when it kind of takes a break, it rests. You're going to see some of that grass turn brown and kind of yucky and everything like that. If you keep watering, some people think, oh, well, the grass doesn't go dormant, but it does. And what it does is it kind of shuts down and it starts sending out new roots and really planning for next year's growth. And then you're going to see the water kind of get turned on in September. We're seeing it right now. It's going to start to come up again, and then it drops again. Anybody know why it drops? You guys don't want to talk. Okay. Ground gets cold. Not going to do anything. So the ground's cold. Not much is happening there. And then, boom, it starts all over again. And we get all this grass going on where, again, we're mowing. Grass goes dormant. We're not mowing at all. In the fall, we're going to mow 1 or 2, 3 more times. And then, boom, it drops down. And we're not doing much in the winter. So that's kind of the cycle for grass and what's going on. So let me ask the next question. What is the most important thing you can do to maintain your lawn? Is it, I can water it, I can mow it, I can fertilize it, I can weed it, or I can replace the lawn with a rock garden? So let me bring my poll up and we'll see what people think. So what do you think? Should you water it, mow it, fertilize it, weed it, or just replace it? Excellent. So what we had one person that said water it, 2 people that said mow it, and 4 people that said fertilize it. So what's the right answer?
Hey, Gary, I was going to choose just stare at it and figure out what to do.
You know, I'll put that answer up there next time. You're kind of right there with the rock garden, Randy. The most important thing you can do is mow your lawn. And so let's talk about why is that so important. When we think about mowing this grass, try and remember the 1/3 rule. The 1/3 rule is you never want to take more than 1/3 of the grass. And so why is that really important? And I'm going to go out for those of you that had a pasture as a young kid, I happen to have a pasture as a young kid. If you remember those grasses that grew up big and tall and kind of up by our necks and everything like that, if you were to reach down and pull that stem off at the very end next to the ground and bite into it, it'd be sweet. That's where all the sugars are in the grass. And when we think about grass is keeping all those sugars and everything that's going to keep it sustained over the year and really build it back up. So as we start to mow that grass further and further down, it takes away a lot of those nutrients that grass needs to snap back. So again, never take more than 1/3. Well, that sounds really realistic until your grass is about 8 inches tall. And your mower is only going to mow 1/3, 3 inches. So if you're not mowing more often and more regular, you're not going to be able to get this. And the problem will be is you're going to start to scalp it and everything like that. So this question should be real easy. how high should my mower be when I want to exit? So when I cut, do I cut at the lowest, the middle, or the highest setting? And I got eight people have answered. All right. So one person said middle. Basically, everybody else said highest. The highest is going to give you your best results. So so we have a really good response here. So highest setting is the best setting. Why? Well, let's look at these two people. You have the ones on the left. They've got, they cut a little bit higher. You have the ones on the left, right? Their teenager got out there. If I mow it short, then I won't have to mow it again for 2 weeks, and really went through. What do you notice about the difference between the two? Well, of course, one's a little greener because it's taller. But if you look at this area that's been, quote, scalped, the brown grass and things like that, what you find is the grass on the right side is going to take more water. It's going to need a lot more water to snap back. It's going to become more weeds, because weeds are going to all of a sudden see a little more sunlight, and they're going to go, wow, maybe I could actually bust through this and take off. You're going to find this lawn on the right is going to have more weeds, and it's going to turn brown. It's going to damage that grass because you have those hills and everything. Scalps that grass, hurts that grass. You don't see that on the left side. The left side is going to be nice and thick. It's going to take less water, and it's probably going to resist weeds for the most part a lot more. Any questions up to now? Wow, you guys are great.
Hey, Gary, I did put one in the chat. If mowing's the best, what about mulching versus bagging?
We're going to talk about that.
Okay.
Do I need to water my yard? So, depends. If you water it, then you're going to have to mow it more. This might need a little bit of water. And again, grass is going to go dormant, and it's going to come back when the water comes back on. But how much water? If you want to keep that grass going, how much water do you have? So, okay, we're back to our poll again. And stop saying. Number 4. So how much water does my yard need? Does it need 1 inch per week, 1 inch twice a week, 1 inch every other day? When the water starts to form puddles on the ground, what do we think? God, you guys are quick at this. So we have 9 out of 9. I'm going to go ahead, and most people said 1 inch per week. 2 people thought 1 inch twice a week, and then one person said 1 inch every other day. So let's see what the answer is. The answer is 1 inch about a week. And there's all kinds of different ways to water. How do you know you're actually getting 1 inch per week? Depending on how you're measuring. One of the things that I always suggest is,
without a tuna can.
Yep. Go in, make a tuna fish sandwich, take the can, set it out there, and turn your water on and say, because, you're going to turn your water on and go, okay, I'm watering for an hour. Well, did you get an inch of water in an hour? You have no idea. So go ahead and turn your water on, turn it off after an hour, and see how much water you have in the can. That will tell you how much water you're getting. And so water about 1 inch per week. If it rains every once in a while, which it tends to do, last Friday we got more than almost an inch in an hour. Not really a big deal. So as you use your system, especially if you have an automatic system, how long do you leave it on for? There's no reason of wasting water and that type of thing. So,
what % loss do you get when I know you can't drip a full lawn, but I'm just curious how much water you use by using a sprinkler system. You lose.
You get a little bit more because it aerates and drifts, and so you'll see some of that. I don't know if I could give you a percentage. The bigger the water droplets, the less you're going to lose. The other thing is when you're watering during the day. If you're going to water during the heat of the day, you're going to lose a lot more to evaporation than you do it late at night or early in the morning. So when it's cooler and it's a little cloudier, it's not full sun, you're going to get a lot more water that will stay with the lawn, kind of soak that ground versus evaporate up.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep. Will it help to fertilize my yard? No, the grass will just fine without it. Yes, it makes it look better than my neighbor's. Yes, it controls weeds, or no, it's really not cost effective. So what do we think? God, you guys are great about playing along with the game tonight. Ooh, this is getting interesting this time. So I've got 9 of you that voted, and we see that 2 people said, nope, the grass will do fine without it. A couple of people said, I really want it to look better than my neighbors. Most people thought, yes, it controlled weed. And the last one, no, it's not cost effective. That's a really interesting one. So what is the answer? The biggest reason to fertilize is control weeds. And it may make it look better than my neighbors. Yes, that's true. Is it cost effective? If you're starting to spend a lot of stuff on weeds and other things like that, maybe not so much. And what we're really looking at is trying to have healthy grass. So we look at this, and this just has, don't worry about the fertigation, but basically one fertilized, one not. And what do we see? We see the other one's a little yellow, not quite as healthy, and that's what we're looking for. Really lush, healthy grass. The more lush it is, the less weeds we're going to see. And I guess I love my stories, and so you're going to have to put up with this one. If we think of weeds, or our lawn is in a box, so we've got this piece of sod in the bottom of the box, and we come through and we clip the grass, and we let the grass lie there, and the grass kind of goes back into the ground and everything like that. If we let that grass get 2 foot tall and we have to clip it, we can't really leave it on the ground because it's going to start to mildew and mold and kill the grass underneath it, so we got to take it off. Well, once we start taking grass out of the box, we've lost this closed system. You know, I admit that some of those minerals are going to leach away in the groundwater and things like that, but we have this closed system. Anytime you take grass away, you're not just taking grass, you're taking the nutrients away from it. So over time, you're going to have less of those nutrients that's going to support the grass. And if you have some trees out there and shrubs, they're certainly taking all those nutrients up too, especially a couple of trees. They're sucking up the water, they're sucking up the nutrients. That's why grass has a hard time under the trees. They're being shaded, but it's everything else that tree wants. It's pretty unforgiving about what it's letting go with. So this closed system, as we think about that closed system, we keep taking and taking and taking. It's like a vegetable garden. The first year people vegetable garden, they get all this great stuff. Next year it does okay. After about 3 years, they go, why is it not doing really good? Because we keep taking all the vegetables out of it and all the plants out of it, but we're not replacing anything back. So we need to think about what it is. So a lot of you already know about NPK. N is nitrogen, P is phosphorus, and K is potassium. And when we think about what this does, so nitrogen, we think about up, down, all around. So nitrogen really greens up the leaves. You're throwing a lot of nitrogen down, you're going to really see the green leaves. It's going to make your lawn look super nice. Phosphorus really tends to really help the root system. And again, if we don't have a good, strong root system, that plant is really going to suffer because those roots are like that food storage. When the plant gets clipped off, it takes away from the roots, generates and comes really right back, and then over time fulfills that root system back. And then potassium. helps the roots, helps the whole plant. The big thing about the nitrogen is really a soluble type of element. And so when you see it, it tends to flow with the water. If you put nitrogen on and it rains the next day, you're not going to have a lot of nitrogen left. It's going to flow with the water. It's going to go away. The phosphorus and potassium, they really bind with a lot of the soil. And so they'll stay around for quite a long time. So phosphorus and potassium, when we take soil tests here in the county, and I see quite a few of them for pastures and different things in vegetable gardens, you find phosphorus and potassium are usually pretty normal. They're usually in the middle range. Nitrogen, it's always low. Unless you're putting nitrogen on, there's going to be some there, but there's not going to be an abundance of nitrogen. And then the pH is usually between, 5.5 and 6.5. It's always a little bit acidic. So what kind of fertilizer do we need? Do we have a 12-12-12, which is NPK? We have a 12-4-6, or we have a 6-4-12? So let's see what people think. Wow, you guys are pretty sharp. Wow, you guys are good. 12-4-6, exactly. Now, if you didn't know, if you've never taken a soil test, soil tests are going to run you about $12, $14. And they don't need to be done every year because your soil isn't going to change that often. But if we look back at a soil test, probably once every 3 to 4 years, if you want to know where you're at. But yes, you're going to need some nitrogen on it. You don't need the phosphorus or potassium. And again, they're going to bind with the soil, so a little bit is good. But it may even get to the point, and you may not know it, where you don't really need any phosphorus, potassium at all. It's mostly the nitrogen. So it's this, I didn't share it, I'm sorry. If I don't share the poll, somebody throw a rock at me or something. So the 12-4-6, that's really what we're looking at. So 12-4-6. So does a 12-12-12 the same thing as a 6-6-6? I'm not going to ask you on this one. I'm just going to let you think about this for a second before I explain it. So we have a 12-12-12 in one bag. I have a 6-6-6 in the other bag. Are they the same?
Sort of.
Art, you can't answer. You already know the answer.
Yep.
Some of you know the answer. So let's
In concentration.
What is a 12-12-12 and a 6-6-6? A 12-12-12 means that I have, in a 100-pound bag, I have 12 pounds of nitrogen, 12 pounds of phosphorus, and 12 pounds of potassium. In this 100-pound bag, at the bottom, I have 6 pounds of nitrogen, 6 pounds of phosphorus, and 6 pounds of potassium. So it means I have to put twice as much 6-6-6 on the ground as I do 12-12-12. That's when you want to start thinking about cost. A lot of times the 6-6-6 is a lot cheaper. Why is it so much cheaper? It's because you have to put twice as much on. Right. So you don't have to put twice as much on. You don't have to work as hard, but you want to think about, well, how much should I really pay for this? Is it really worth? So, and what's the difference between a 12-11-12 and a 12-12-12? Not that much difference. And so sometimes I see people, I said, get a 12-4-6, and somebody will go out there, well, this is a 12-5-5. God, it's not exactly. They're looking over the shelves. Don't get too caught up with the numbers are close. That's not going to be a problem. You want a lot of nitrogen, you want less phosphorus, you want less potassium. That's really what you're looking for. And a lot of that for the roses and different things like that. But know that the difference between 12 and 6 and the one on the bottom is you're basically having to put twice as much on, so you're having to buy twice as much. That's the big difference. What about the difference between chemical and organic? So I have two fertilizers here. One is a little fresher on the right than the other one. So what's the big difference? And again, not going to pull you on this one. You guys have already done enough of that. But just think about it for a second. What's the big difference? They're both fertilizers. They both are going to boost the plants.
Absorption rate.
Mm-hmm. So, and I know you know the answer, Jackie. You're a master gardener too. So when we look at the chemical fertilizer, the chemical, when we put it on the ground, it's ready now. It's like Alka-Seltzer. It's fizzing up. It's really helping those plants. It gets absorbed. A year from now, most of that chemical fertilizer isn't around. It's gone. The plant has already used it up. The plant is ready, and it's taken it. The animal fertilizer, well, it's more complex, big molecules. And so it takes a while. It gets incorporated into the ground. And once it gets incorporated, and it, you know, this is like compost and doesn't have to be fresh like this, compost or anything. It takes a while for the bugs and the earthworms and everything to break some of those molecules down to the point where it gets used up by the plant. Some of it's available right now. But some of it's available maybe in about months or even a year. And so when you look at the organic, it's something that's going to be a slow release. You're going to get about 3-4 years of advantage out of that. Now, when I talk about that, if I have 100 pounds of chemical and 100 pounds of organic, it's the same 100 pounds. I get all that chemical right now. The organic, maybe I get 50 pounds advantage this year, 30 pounds next year, and 20 pounds in the third year. So that's the difference between the organic and chemical. If you want to, I mean, what about Miracle-Gro? Miracle-Gro is great. You put it on, boom, that plant absorbs it up. It's green. It's a happy plant. You know, you got happy grass out there with kind of a Miracle-Gro. But the manure, it takes a little bit longer. You're going, man, it's just not working as well. But you're going to get a lot longer. So that's the difference between the two. They just work a different way. You still get the full benefit of them, but they just don't quite work quite the same way. When is the best time to fertilize my lawn? If you want to do it right, what you would do, so if you need 100 pounds of fertilizer on your lawn, what you would do is divide it up into 4 equal amounts. And the easiest way to remember is Memorial Day, the 4th of July, Labor Day, and Thanksgiving. It's real easy to remember the holidays. You don't have to go out there on the 4th of July. You want to be doing fireworks and spending, but those are the 4 times where you could really put it out there. Memorial is right after that grass has come on, and especially, when is the last frost-free? Art, you know this answer, don't tell them. Frost-free date for Longview. May 11th. So the ground is still pretty cold. So when we get into Memorial Day, the ground is just starting to warm up. When the ground's warm, the plant is starting to grow. If the plant isn't growing, it's not able to absorb that fertilizer, and that fertilizer could float away. You don't want to fertilize.
Got a question in chat.
What?
You have a question in chat?
Okay. Can you read it to me?
Yeah, what was the breakdown for what is available to the lawn with the organic fertilizer?
About 50 the first year, 30 the second year, and about 20 the third year. So in looking, thank you, Art. Thank you. So in looking at these, what happens? So the Memorial Day, you're putting it on right after the grass is just getting started. The grass is up and growing and really taking off. You got the 4th when the grass is kind of just about done for the year, and it's going into that dormant period. You certainly want to make sure the grass is still kind of growing. The Labor Day coming into fall, and then Thanksgiving probably as going in the winter. If I was going to divide it in half, if I was only going to do 2 of them, I would do Memorial Day and Labor Day. And if I was only going to do 1, I would probably do Labor Day. Keep that grass healthy and everything through the winter. Really make sure that it has a good winter, because you don't want to come out to your lawn and go, where did my grass go? What happened to it? So Labor Day and Memorial Day, if you want to just do them twice. Why should you leave grass clippings and not rake your lawn? I don't want to argue with my teenager about getting it raked. The grass will act as a mulch and keep the moisture in the ground. The cut grass will fertilize the lawn. And no, I need to rake my lawn so that it looks better for my neighbors. And so this one I'm gonna get a pull. So, oh, excuse me, wrong one. So, are you doing it because it's just you don't want to argue with your teenager? It'll be a mulch and ask for moisture. It'll help to fertilize the lawn. No, I just really want to look better to my neighbors. That's what it's all really about. Okay, and we have 8 of you that answered, 9 of you that answered. Most of you thought that the cut grass will act as a fertilizer. And that's exactly right. It will give you a little bit of mulch and help keep a little bit of moisture in, but that thatch that develops over time can be a real problem. So cut grass will fertilize the lawn. How much value do you get out of it? About 40%. So if you leave all that grass on the lawn, and of course it goes down in there, it breaks down, you can cut back on your fertilizer by 40%. That's pretty significant. So what's the best 3 ways to combat weeds? And you can answer 3 of them on this time. We're just about done with our polls. I only have a couple more left. So, water the lawn, mow the lawn, fertilize the lawn, spray weed killer. I don't care about the weeds. I'm just going to let them grow.
That is me. I just let them grow.
That's kind of my attitude, especially when it's football season. My wife knows.
When you have cat's ear weeds, you have to spray.
Okay, let's see how we did. We had 100% for mow the lawn and fertilize the lawn, which is true. And then the third one was water the lawn, and that's true too. So water the lawn, mow the lawn. What it really comes down to is healthy grass. You shouldn't have to spray weed killer if you have healthy grass. It's going to be lush. It's going to be tall. It's going to really avoid a lot of those weeds coming up. Some of you already know that if I have a weed and it comes up and it drops seed on the ground, it can drop somewhere around, 1,000 to 2,000 seeds on the ground, some of these. I mean, that dandelion, that's full of seeds. They will last in the ground somewhere between 15 and 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so you think, what happened? All of a sudden these weeds are coming up in my yard. Plus the birds are doing a nice job of dropping weed seeds on your yard too. Is those seeds are always there. The thing that stops them, they're waiting for that chance where they get air and sunlight and water so they can really pop up. If you've got a nice, healthy yard, that's not going to happen. They're just kind of kept at bay, and sooner or later they'll die out. So the healthier you keep the grass. Again, do you have to fertilize it? Probably not. Do you have to water it? I don't tend to water my grass. But again, I have a few more weeds that I'm pretty tolerant of. And I want to talk about herbicides because there's 2 types of herbicides. I'm not asking you to use herbicides, but I think it's important to know. Because my daughter went outside and she said, you have some dandelions. And I got home that night and she'd used Roundup on my dandelions. That was a problem for me because she didn't understand it. There are basically 2 types. We have Roundup. Roundup, it touches it, it kills it. It tends to deactivate probably after 24 to 48 hours as soon as it hits the soil. I've seen people get Roundup on the bottom of the shoe, walk across the yard, and the next day there were footprints. I mean, it's pretty effective. But 3 days later, that area that you sprayed with Roundup, stuff is going to start coming up through. So Roundup, it basically kills everything. That's not true. Those of you that have horsetail, Roundup, it's just, horsetail's just laughing at Roundup. So, but it's fairly effective. And when I talk about Roundup, really, if you look on there, and you will look right here, the active ingredient is glyphosate. There's a lot of different a lot of different brands that use glyphosate. They do all the same thing. Then we come over here and we see this 2,4-D amine weed killer. And if we look at that 2,4-D, that's 2,4-dichloroferroxylic acid. And I didn't pronounce that very well. I'm just looking for the 2,4-D. When you see something that has 2,4-D in it, what it tends to do is it kills those plants that are broadleaf. So the blackberries, the dandelions, thistles, different things like that. Those things that have a big leaf. 2,4-D tends to leave grass alone. So the reason I was kind of upset with my daughter, if she would have used the 2,4-D, I wouldn't have these big patches of bare ground out in my yard. And bare ground just means I'm going to get more weeds coming up in it, and which is what happened. So, so if I'm going to look at killing dandelions or whatever, I'm looking for a 2,4-D product. Look at the label. If I can tell you anything about spraying, make sure you read the label and follow it. Labels are very exact. They'll tell you what weeds they kill. They will tell you what they put on. They will tell you when to spray and those type of things. Follow the label. If you can't find a label, call me. I can get you a label. I can answer your questions on it. If you're using herbicides, again, it's better to spot spray. You don't need to spray the whole yard. Just spray the plant. Don't overspray. Watch out for drips. You know, I see these guys where they're going, okay, one glug, maybe I'll put 3 or 4 glugs in. More is better. More is not better. More is worse. It will kill much more. It's the amount of concentrate of herbicide is set there to protect not only the plants, but it's assuming there's going to be dogs and cats walk through the yard and different things like that. It's there to protect people, the yard, and everything. When you double up on that amount, you start to create some real problems. If the plant's not growing, the plant's not going to take it in. So if I'm spraying and it's the dead of winter and it's 10 degrees out, which I probably wouldn't do that anyway, that plant's not growing, that plant is going to take any of that poison in. It's not really going to have a very good kill. Usually spring is a really good time to spray plants. And you have to know the plant. Most of you know what tansy looks like. When tansy gets tall and starts at seeds, it lives for 2 years. The second year where it's tall and bites for seeds, that's it. It's gone. It's not going to come back. So if I spray tansy when it's tall, I'm really wasting my money because it's not going to live another 2 months anyway. And spraying does not kill the seeds. Once seeds have been developed, the spray has no effect on the seeds. They're still going to drop on the ground. They're still going to come up. So know what plants and know when to do them. We do have a noxious weed board. I do have master gardeners. You have any questions ever about spraying, please come and ask us. We would be happy to be clear about it. Again, it's not your first choice. Should never be your first choice, but there are times. A clear, calm day, 50 to 80 degrees. If it gets really hot, it tends to volatilize that spray a little bit more. If it gets really cold, it just doesn't work well. Don't apply in the rain. It'll wash it away. Probably don't want to mow your lawns for about 2 days. Give it a chance for that spray to really take it into that plant and get the kill that you want it to have. And sometimes it can damage new plants. And what's your tolerance? My tolerance is if I have one dandelion, I don't care. It's not a big deal to me. This is a little bit different situation. This is probably going to require a chemical. If you go out there and dig every dandelion out, you might as well just plow the whole yard and start over. So when you get to this point, you're probably going to have to spray. And that's unfortunate. If you really don't like weeds, get on top of them early. Pull them out. You know, you can wear a plant. Even if you don't kill it, you can wear it out over time. Keep after a weed and you'll get ahead of it. Once it gets to this point, you're talking a little more major surgery. Then we look at this yard, and if you can look where my pointer's at, and you can see the white really well, these are different grass varieties. So this is one grass, and the darker grass is another one. And I get people to say, this grass is creeping into my yard. What can I do about that? Any ideas? Nothing. You cannot, there is not a spray out there that's going to kill this grass and leave this grass. The only thing you can do is start all over. And I kind of pity the person that I had one person, he had changed his yard 3 times because this was happening. And I'm thinking, it's really hard to keep your lawn carefree so that it doesn't get invaded from other yards. Again, if you have that grass, it's big, it's thick, it's tall, it's going to resist that situation. But for the most part, you know, as you start to get other grass varieties in there, there's very little you can do. And again, if you go to the store and you say, I just want some grass seed, you may be putting a different variety on there that's going to give you a different color. What's the best way to kill moths? This is my last question. Mow closer to the ground, use moss killer, leave it alone, water less often. So you guys have been really good to me. We're only going to make you do this one more time. What's the best way to control moss? Water less often, leave it alone, use moss killer, mow closer to the ground. Okay, and I'll give it about 3 more seconds. Wow. So most people thought use moss killer. Some said water less often, and one person said leave it alone. And so the drum roll is, I got to get rid of this. Leave it alone.
But it spreads.
It will, but what moss is moss is there because the grass, it can actually receive a lot of water. It can receive a lot of light. If you start cutting your grass taller, it will shade out the moss and the moss will go away. Moss is not killing the grass. The grass is dying for other reasons. People think, well, the moss is there, it's killing the grass. Moss is there because there's bare ground. There's not something shading me out. God, I can actually live in this situation. Don't spend a lot of money on moss killer. Put the effort into getting healthier grass. In the summer, when it dries out, your moss is going to be gone. The heat.
I wish.
So paying attention to the moss is not what you want to do. Don't use the moss killer. Don't mow closer to the ground because that's just going to encourage the moss. And of course, when do we see moss? When it's wetter out. So you can water less often, but again, the moss is not the problem. It's the grass. The grass is not thick enough. It's not lush enough to really do anything about the moss.
Okay.
So thatch. What is thatch? Well, it's this dead grass that kind of hangs around down here.
Right.
And so we could do this with the rake. Now, if you have an acre of lawn like I used to have, this is not going to work. And not even my son would attempt something like this. They do have thatchers that attach the lawns or something like this, but you can come up with a lot of thatch. And you got to take it off the yard. You can't leave it there. This dead dyed grass is not going to break down over time. It's just going to tend to accumulate, which is, we think about this thatch. The other thing you can do is aerate. And you can see all kinds of different ways that they've got aerating. You know, we go through, I remember the aerators out, you know, from the schoolyards. And they take those plugs and there's all these plugs running around. I go, what? Aerating, what it does is allows more air into the ground. It opens it up for moisture, especially as it starts to get a little bit compacted and things like that. Schoolyards, you got all these kids running around and they're pushing on the ground. And what they want to do is open that grass up so it's a little more healthy. Do you take these off the ground or do you leave them on?
Take them on.
I'd leave them on. Not going to hurt anything. There's not going to be enough there. It's just kind of like molehills. If you leave them alone, they'll go back into the ground. If you take all these off, you're taking all those nutrients with them. So I don't think you need to take them off there. Not like the thatch. The thatch, that grass, that's a little bit different. But with this, I would just leave them there and let them go back into the yard. They'll break down over time. Especially if you were to do it when it's a little bit moist out, you're going to see those things start to break down a little bit faster. So let's talk about the new yard. So you've decided, I want the perfect yard. I'm going to start off right. So we're going to get that ground and we're going to work it. You know, we've got it nice and flat, nice and level. You want to work this ground, and you can see this footprint here. That's what you're looking for. You are not looking for something that's fluffy. You know, you drop that seed on it. How far does that seed have to go? A seed goes down about as far as a pencil eraser, about a fourth. We don't need to go very far with that seed. And so what we do is we put the seed on it, then we bring the ground over it. And that's really the philosophy for planting. You throw the seed over it, and then a lot of times, in the old days, what they used to do is behind a tractor, they used to draw a log or a bed spring. All they were doing is trying to bring some dirt back over the seed, just enough to cover it. So we don't want fluffy ground. We want kind of a firm, not hard, but firm. But I do want to talk about compaction, especially because I talked about the aerating. This is normally what soil is on the left-hand side. We see half of it solid, but there's some water and air spaces in there. And that's where the bugs are going through it and the worms are going through it. And that allows that water and air to move through the ground and help that plant, because that plant is picking up some of the water, a little bit of the air, but it's certainly picking up water from the ground. But if we have a schoolyard where those kids are running and running and running, and they have compacted it, especially during the winter. During the summer, that ground's so hard, yeah, you just about need a bulldozer to compact that ground. But during the winter, it's a little bit soft and everything, and you start squeezing the life out of it. If you've ever looked at the kids, and if they ever use the same trail every day, day after day after day, pretty soon you get that ground, and there's no grass living on it. If you would have those kids walk away for 2 weeks, you still wouldn't be any grass on it because it's so compacted, it won't allow anything to grow on it. We've squeezed all the water out of it. We've squeezed all the life out of it. And so that's why we worry about compaction. That's why we're aerating. If you don't have a lot of compaction, if you know you've got a big yard, but nobody's ever, except the dog is going out there, or the cat's going out there every once in a while, you probably don't have a problem with compaction. You probably don't have to worry about aerating. But if you've got this where the ground is constantly, you've got kids over every weekend during the winter and you're playing with your grandkids and having a great time, or your kids are out there and they're running around and the neighborhood is there and everything, and pretty soon then maybe aeration would be a good thing. And this is one of my stories. You have to put up with my stories. I'm sorry. So this is the crowded elevator story. So you looked at all these people and they decided, how many people can we get in this elevator? They did a pretty good job. And they get more and they get more and they get more. And pretty soon, this guy's not going in there if he's smart. I have another story about a crowded elevator. Teenagers got in it, and the elevator got stuck between floors for 2.5 hours, and one of the girls was claustrophobic. That was not a story that ended well, but I digress. Anyway, so we have this crowded elevator. For somebody to come in, somebody has to go out. Think of that as your yard. If you have nice, lush grass, and it looks really good and really lush, for a weed or something to come in and invade it, something has to leave. So as long as it's healthy, as long as it's growing lush, that's not going to happen. It's going to maintain where it's at. On the reverse side of that, a lot of times we look at our yard and we think, wow, I really could use, it really needs a facelift. And there's lawns growing out there, and I think, what if I just throw some seed out there? And I think we think in our back of our mind, we're going to take a little pixie dust, and we're going to sprinkle it on that seed, and we're going to throw it out there, and next spring, we are going to have a fabulous yard. It's not going to happen. There is no magic. And part of the reason is the elevator. your grass that's out there, even as brown and as ugly as it looks, it's not going to give up to these new young cumbers sitting on top of the soil, and those seeds are just going to sit there and rot. If you want to make your soil, you're going to have to take some of this grass out, and you're going to have to, or you're going to have to incorporate that seed in. But even if you can incorporate that seed into an existing yard, don't expect it to change overnight. And that's because of the crowded elevator syndrome. So get out here, work the yard up. You don't want the ground fluffy. You do want it firm, but you want it soft on top. It shouldn't be hard pan. And then plant the seed. Again, the garden rake is you throw that, you create some furrows in there, throw the seed on it, and then you turn this rake over and just kind of run it across. It's going to pull that soil over the top. Give it some water. You'll see it take off. So with that, you have put up with me for 55 minutes. That's enough.